everyone. Today I am going to be briefly discussing the book Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson, who also wrote one of the books that I previously reviewed called Amy and Roger's Epic Detour. And basically this story follows sort of a similar kind of style in that Morgan Matson likes to write young adult novels, and in particular this, I guess you could consider a young adult novel. But basically this one in particular follows a young girl at the age of 17 whose father is unfortunately dying of cancer. And basically the book sort of goes through not only the past experiences that she's had at this one particular place, which ultimately the family decides to go to, but also the interactions between her and her family, in particular her father, as well as former friends and a former boyfriend. So we really do see how the past sort of resurfaces here. Even though, and that's, I guess, what makes it different than Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, because it does focus in on some past experiences that the person has, and it's also told through Taylor's point of view, which is the main character and the girl who has the father who's dying of cancer. But basically, I thought this one would be interesting to discuss because I know a lot of cancer novels that focus on the person in particular who has cancer, but I've never seen one that focuses on someone who knows someone and who's really close to someone who has this kind of condition. So I thought it would be interesting to look at it through that perspective. And you sort of see similar themes appear and similar struggles that the characters go through. For example, the main character, Taylor, sort of has trouble letting people into her life because of the pain that she has and what she's going through with her father. So it's all pretty much straightforward, understandable young adult material. As far, I hate to compare between the two, meaning compare Amy Rogers' Epic Detour with this novel in particular, but I felt overall, story-wise, writing-wise, character-wise, I thought that Amy and Roger's Epic Detour was actually a little bit stronger than this book, and I've actually noticed within this book various errors within, like, not necessarily the spelling, really, but just that there was words that were repeated that didn't need to be repeated. And I felt that this one was rather simple in its writing structure compared to Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, which I thought was a lot more creative and a lot more in-depth and interesting. And with this one, I felt it was just a little bit more just generic in the way it approached the writing, and it was just fairly simple to read. So, does this mean, though, that this book is bad? No, I think this book is relatively good for what it offers. It does give you a sense of what emotions people would be going through when it comes to having someone who's dying of a type of cancer, and it addresses things sometimes in a lighthearted way, and it does touch you. I mean, it does. I think it does grasp its readers, but I feel like the way it's structured is a lot more simplistic and a lot less creative and a lot less out there. And I felt like with Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, since it was more of an adventure type book, there was a lot of twists and turns that I didn't expect to happen. And in this book, I felt that the plot was fairly predictable because you know what ultimately the end outcome is. You know ultimately what the characters are going to kind of go through. You really do sort of have the plot already set up to the point where it's pretty predictable. And ultimately, I also think the characters are not really all that interesting compared to Amy and Roger's Epic Detour. I felt like that this book was trying to sort of capture similar aspects like Amy and Roger's Epic Detour was, but it kind of, I don't think it came off as strong as Amy and Roger's Epic Detour did. But there are aspects, again, like the fact that we have this one particular character who's suffering from a cancer, and we have a family sort of struggling through that experience, really shines through with this book, and you do feel the connection that the family has together, at least. I would just say that ultimately the characters are not really, I mean, at least the main character, like Taylor, I don't think she's really all that interesting. But again, I don't know if the author really intended for that to be so that we could be in her position. And I think a lot of teen novels really do this on purpose. I really don't think they do it because they want to, because they're lazy. I think they do it because that's really how the book's supposed to be set up. But I think overall it is relatively strong. It does have a coherent style and a plot that makes sense and characters that are believable. I just think that it's a little bit, it's just a little bit less in depth as her previous book, and therefore I don't find it as engaging or as interesting, because I feel like I know going in what's going to happen, and I know what the end result is going to be. But if you don't mind knowing really the end result and the emotions, and you just want to absorb yourself into the experience of it, then you will, I think, enjoy this book fine. But ultimately, really, that's basically the book in a nutshell. It does go sort of a little bit back and forth between the last time she was there, because they end up going to this lake, Lake Phoenix, and apparently it's where they always used to go during the summer, and I think they actually used to live there, but they ended up ultimately moving, and then just using that as a summer home and coming during the summer, but ultimately, I think that this book tries to put in, past relationships and sort of creates the same thing that Amy and Roger's Epic Detour does, but I still feel like that book was just a lot stronger, and it sort of does deal with death sort of similarly to how this story does, except it doesn't have to do really with cancer. But if you do like these kinds of stories, if you do enjoy sort of getting absorbed into these kinds of experiences, and you find what the characters are going through to be relatable, then I think I definitely would recommend it. I just don't think, comparing this author's recent work, I don't think this book as a book is as strong as her previous book, Amy Rogers' Epic Detour. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say about this book in particular. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody.